Hi guys, you're welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Tessie and today we'll be making this beautiful dress. As you can see on the screen, it's going to be a very quick and easy tutorial. If you're yet to subscribe, kindly do that and let's get right into the video. For this, you'll be needing like 4 yards of fabric. So I have folded my pattern paper into two. So what I'll do next is just from the starting point, I'm just going to come down to like 4 inches or 5. Just come down a bit, then you rule the line. So this line will serve as my shoulder line. So this will serve as my shoulder line. So what I'll do next is take my shoulder measurement and I will divide it by 2. So my shoulder divided by 2 is 8 inches, and from that point I'll come down to my armhole line, which is 9 inches. Since this is a sleeveless, I'll be using 8 inches. So from there, I came to the bust point line at 11, and the half length is 17 inches, but I'll be adding extra half an inch for joining allowance. That's 17 and a half. So I'll go ahead now to connect the lines. What I did next was to indicate my chest line, my bust point, and my half length. On the shoulder area, I'll be placing my neck measurement. I'll be using 3 by 5 inches. 3, then I came down by 5 inches, but later I changed it to like 7 inches. So from that point I'm just going to curve in my neckline. So you can either curve it this way or you can just make it like a V neckline. It depends on how you want it to be. So on that shoulder area, I'll check what I have 8 inches divided by 2 will give me 4. From that point, I'll come in by half an inch, and then on the chest line, I'll place my bust measurement divided by 4. So the bust I'm working with divided by 4 is 10. And from that point, I'm just going to curve in my armhole. So what I'll do next is on the chest line, I'll place my bust measurement divided by 4. Then I'll be adding extra 2 inches for my sewing allowance. On the half length, I'll place my waist measurement divided by 4, and I'll also add 2 inches for my sewing allowance. I'll go ahead now to connect my lines together. So since this is a sleeveless, you determine how wide you want this shoulder area to be. For me, I don't want it too wide, so I'm just going to be making use of like 3 inches. So from this point, that's from the neckline, I'll chalk 3 inches. So from that 3 inches line, I'm just going to curve it into the armhole. So from that point, I'll just curve into the armhole. So using my curve ruler, I just curved. So what I'll do next is, since we are attaching a rope to this point, you come up a bit. So you come up to like 3 inches. So from this neckline area, just come up to 3 inches. And from this point as well, you come up to 3 inches. So just watch what I'm doing. I came up from that point by 3, and I also came up on this area by 3 inches. So I'll go ahead now to connect my lines together. If you do not understand what I just did, just rewind the video, you will get it. So what I'll do is just connect the lines together. So what I did was, on the shoulder area, I came up by 3 inches on this side, and I also came up by 3 inches on this side. So what we'll be doing next is slashing out the pattern. So it depends on how deep you want it to be. So for me, I don't want it too deep, but if you want it deep, let's say from the bust point line, you could just slash all the way down to the chest line area. Since mine is not going to be deep, I'm just going to be sticking with this chest line area. So my slashing is going to be around that chest line area. So I'm just going to connect my line together just this way. Then I'll go ahead now to cut out my pattern first before we slash. So guys, I have a detailed video on how to make a cowl top. If you're yet to watch that video, I'll drop the link on the description box. So as you can see, after cutting out my pattern, this is what it looks like. So from this chest line area, I'm just going to slash and stop somewhere before the end of the pattern. So from the chest line area, I'm just going to slash and stop somewhere before the end of the pattern. So this is what we have. We're going to be using this pattern to cut out our main fabric. So guys, I'll be making use of this fabric. It is called a silk duchess and I'm making use of 4 yards of fabric. So I folded my fabric into two, then I placed my pattern on my fabric as you can see. After placing, I went ahead to pin it down just to hold it in place. Now, depending on how full you want your cowl effect to be, you can use 8 inches, 5 inches, 6 inches, depending on how full you want it to be. So for me, I want it a bit full. So I'm just going to be chalking 9 inches thereabouts. So from that 9 inches line that I chalked, I'm just going to curve. Just watch what I'm doing. As you can see. So from that 9 inches line, I'm just trying to like get the shape. So I'm just tracing out my pattern from that 9 inches. Trace it out just the way I am doing. So guys, this is what it looks like. I'll go ahead now to cut out my pattern. So after cutting out my pattern, this is what it looks like. As you can see, I'm just going to take out my pins, and after taking it out, when you open it up, you have something like this. So when I arrange it down, you could see the cowl effect, right? So go ahead now to cut out the back. The back is very simple to cut. So since we are not going to be making use of this part, just go ahead and take it out. So you don't need this part for the back, so just take it out and this will serve as the back. What we'll do is just add our zip allowance on this side and we are good to go. So for the back, I chalked the starting point, then I'll be adding 2 inches for my zip allowance. So I chalk 2 inches all the way down and connected it into a straight line. After doing that, I'm just going to place my pattern on the fabric after the 2 inches zip allowance. Just place your pattern. After doing that, go ahead now to cut out your fabric. So guys, to eliminate zip bulge, what I'll do is on this half length area, I'm just going to come in by half an inch. You can come in by half an inch or 0.75. Then just from that point, just slant all the way up. So from that point, I just slanted all the way up. So guys, this is what it looks like. I'll go ahead now to cut out the zip allowance area. After cutting it out, make sure to notch. So what I did next was to fold my fabric into two. I'm going to be cutting the facing for the front. So I folded my fabric as you can see. Now go ahead now to cut. So I'll cut my facing and I'll be stopping somewhere after the armhole. You can see. So this is what we have. I'm just going to place my facing on the main fabric. After placing, I'm going to be stitching all around and also stitch at the armhole. Then what I'll do here is just fold and use my Amy gum to hold it in place. So after stitching and notching, this is what it looks like as you can see. And I also use my Amy gum at the down part of the facing. So I'll go ahead now to open it up just as you see me do. Make sure to like iron proper. So when you open it up, this is what it will look like. So guys, for the back, I've gone ahead to cut out my facing. The facing is full facing I used for the back. I stitched and torn it out. Now for the front, we'll be tying the neck area for the front. So I've gone ahead to cut out my band. You can see this is what I'll be using to tie. Unfold is 2.5 inch. So what I'll do now is just turn the front part of the dress in order to attach my band to it. That's the rope. So after turning it out, I'm just going to take one of the rope and I'll place it in and stitch by half inch. Then I'll do the same thing for this other part as well. I'm going to place it in and stitch by half inch. After doing that, I'll go ahead now to turn it out. So this is what it looks like after doing that. So what I'll do next is to cut out the down part of the gown. So as you can see, I folded my fabric into two. Then I'm just going to chalk my starting point. This starting point will serve as my waistline. From that point, I came down to my hip line. Then I connected it into a straight line, as you can see. Then the next thing I did was to chalk my knee line. And I also connected it into a straight line. So what I'll do next is on the waist, I'm going to put my waist measurement divided by 4 inches. And I'll be adding extra 2 inches to it. Then I'll take my hip measurement divided by 4, and I'll also be adding 2 inches sewing allowance to it. Now I'll go ahead to connect from the waist to the hip. Since this is not a pencil gown, I'll check what I have on the waist. The same thing I have on the hip rather, I'll place it on the knee line as well. Since it's not a pencil gown, it's just going to go down straight. So I just placed what I have on the hip on the knee. Then I connected it into a straight line. And I'm just going to go all the way down. So I'll just go all the way down. So after chalking all the way down, I'll go ahead now to cut out my fabric. So after cutting out my fabric, we are done with the front part of the gown. What I'll do next is to cut out the back. So for the back, I folded my fabric into two. Then I chalked my 2 inches for my zip allowance. After doing that, I placed my front on the back. Then as you can see, I'm just cutting out my fabric. So after cutting out my fabric, what I'll do next is to notch the zip allowance area so I don't get confused. So what I'll be doing next is joining. So I took the down part of the skirt and I'm going to be joining it with the top part of the gown. So I'm just going to place right side facing each other. Then I'll stitch all the way down using half inch. After doing that, I'll do the same thing for the back part of the dress. I'm just going to place the back on the back and stitch using half inch. I'll do the same thing for this part as well. So you place and you stitch. So guys, after stitching, this is what it looks like, as you can see. So what I'll do next is attach my zip. I'm using an invisible zip, which is best for fabric like this. After adding the zip, this is what it looks like. So what I'll be doing next is joining the front and the back together. As you can see, I'm just trying to pin them down. When joining the front and the back together, you make sure the half length is equal on each sides. So I'm just going to join them, and after joining, I'm going to be taking my measurement and I'll be stitching. So I'll go ahead now to arrange it. You need to arrange the sides, then you join. So after stitching, this is what it looks like, as you can see. So guys, this is what it looks like. So what we'll be doing now is giving it a slit. Now you have to determine how deep you want the slit to be. So for this, what I did was from that waistline, I'm just going to chalk how deep I want my slit to be. So for now, I used 16 inches, but later changed it to 14 because the slit was not that deep. So for now, I have 16 inches for my slit. So what you do now is you determine how wide you want the slit to be. So from this side of the fabric, you chalk how wide you want it. So I used like 7 inches, but later I had to reshape though. So you have to chalk how deep and wide you want your slit to be. So after chalking how deep and wide you want your slit to be, you just connect it all the way down. So I'm just trying to make my lines visible. So after connecting, what I'll do next is just open up the fabric this way. So go ahead, open up your fabric this way. Then when you open it up this way, you know this area is for the back. So depending on how open you want the back to be as well. So for the back, I don't want it that wide. So what I'll do is just chalk where I'm going to be cutting off. So I hope you understand what I mean. So what I'll do is just cut out my fabric so that you understand what I just said. So I'm cutting the slit area. Then when I go to the back, I just cut out that seam area a bit. So like I said, after trying to fit the dress, I realized that the slit was too small, so I had to make it go up a bit. So guys, I went ahead to reshape the slit area, and after reshaping my slit, this is what it looks like. As you can see, I made it a bit wider. So what I did off camera was to cut out my flounce. I want to do a proper video on how to achieve a flounce, so that will be a video on its own. So I'll do that and upload very soon. So after cutting out my flounce, I'm just going to attach the flounce, but I want mine to have a pleat. So I'll go ahead now to pleat on the dress. After pleating, I'll iron, weave, and show you guys the end result. So guys, this is the final result of the dress. As you can see, hope this tutorial was helpful. Hope you learned something today. And please do not forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, drop a comment, and kindly follow me on Instagram at So We Tess, also on TikTok at So We Tess. Stay blessed and bye.